Surogomdi. How to make IR suck less. Okay, clickbaity title, but hopefully you clicked on it. Hopefully you hear what I have to say about it. We're talking about how bad IR is, right? We're talking about the negatives of an IR practice. Let's talk about some ways to make it better, right? So I actually made a little list of this. Some things I think we can do to make IR a little bit better. The first thing is, I think the easiest and fastest thing is to simply practice IR really in larger hospitals, right? Larger hospitals, more gravity, more patients, bigger ICUs. You know, IR is really an internal referral based specialty. It may not be so much that patients are coming from outside the hospital and looking to find you. It's more that the patients are already in the hospital and another doctor needs your help in order to accomplish something. IR has its most interesting cases with the sickest patients. Patients that may be having issues with bleeding, issues with obstruction of the biliary tract, the kidney tract, patients that are just sick and dying and have no other option. They don't have any surgical options. Those are the patients that typically come to IR. And if you're in a large hospital, say 500 plus beds with a large ICU full of these sick, dying patients, I think you could find a lot of interesting IR cases. So I think that's something you can make a conscious decision to do. Practice in a large 500 plus bed hospital, whether it's in a big city or not, doesn't really matter, as long as it has that sort of a bed size. Typically, I think unsatisfying IR happens in kind of smaller hospitals. And again, unsatisfying that's based on your definition, right? Smaller hospitals, the IR needs are infrequent. Maybe a couple lines here, maybe a G-tube here and there, maybe a few biopsies, maybe nothing, right? Maybe you're sitting at a list the majority of the day. Again, that may make sense if you see yourself as a radiologist first, but if you're trying to be a big ticket proceduralist, then that might be unsatisfying for you. So first thing I think is practice in a big hospital. Second thing I think is, to make IR suck less, create relationships for the long term. Don't expect that you show up to a hospital, big or small, and expect all the decent cases to be handed over to you. It takes time. And the tough thing is, when you come out of fellowship, you're so ready to get to work that you might find yourself sitting there not doing any decent cases for several months on end, and you get frustrated, and your first thought is, I gotta leave. And I think what you have to do, which is tough, which is really tough, really, really tough, is to say, you gotta stick it out and try to create relationships for the long term. Hey, you gotta get through that tough time, create relationships so that people do refer you cases. And it could take years. And, maybe you have that kind of patience, maybe you don't, but ultimately you can't create something decent without taking some time, right? Easy come, easy go. You want those decent cases, stick around so that people recognize you, see your value, and maybe finally eventually start giving you some cases. I had experience with this working in Pennsylvania where initially some cases that I enjoyed doing, which again, not big cases, things like ports and G-tubes, those weren't there right away. And only after being there for several months, maybe a couple of years, did those referrals finally start to come in. And when they did start coming in, they were coming in kind of like a flood. There'd be tons of ports, tons of G-tubes. But again, it took several months for those to even show up. So take your time, stick it out, create relationships for the long term. And that means a period of time where you're not going to be satisfied. Number 3 is don't expect the world from IR, Expect that you're going to be a radiologist because that's exactly what you signed up for. You signed up to be a radiologist. Expect your life to be sitting in front of a computer on a Saturday morning reading cases because that's what this job is. That's what a radiologist job is. And it should have never been sold to you as anything but that. Again, IR is a continuation of radiology. It's still a radiology specialty. Even though that we have this quote unquote IR residency, it's really an IRDR residency. You're still a diagnostic radiologist when you come out. And if that's not something that you want to do, then you should really not even look at IR in the first place. You should really consider more typically thought of as clinical specialties like cardiology or vascular surgery. Because at the end of the day, IR means radiologist, right? The RAD in IRAD stands for radiologist. No matter what you do, you're going to be a radiologist. If you're not satisfied with that, you're never going to be satisfied in IR. Don't expect the world of IR. Don't expect that all these big cases are going to make you happy. These big cases, these patients with tips, these patients with stents, A lot of times people don't show you the follow-up. They don't show you that that patient status post tips, died a week later, or that person with a bunch of stents in their leg that you revascularized, 6 months later, those stents thrombosed, and that leg did get amputated. People don't show those stories because they're sort of antithetical to their narrative. There's a lot of posturing out there. Again, I'm not hating, I'm just saying it is what it is. Again, don't expect IR to solve all your problems. It's just a way for you to, as a radiologist, participate in interesting procedures, from time to time, depending on their availability in your local market. That's about all I got for today. Again, I don't think IR sucks. I think IR is a great field, but I can see where some people's frustrations may be with the field. That comes down to you. You have some control over this. Learn to manage your expectations. IR can be good or bad, depending on how you look at it. Struggle RMD.